Hello, I'm Bethany Daly from GettinItPegged.com, and I'd love to explain how to do a special stitch today, and that would be the chain lace stitch. Look at that. Isn't that really pretty? This the special thing about this stitch is that it does not have any connecting lines between your chains that create this gorgeous lace. Isn't that fun? So I'm going to be showing you how to do that today. And I am using, just for your reference, the new all-in-one loom by Authentic Knitting Board. It's very well made, well crafted, and I've really been enjoying using it so far. The gauge is a small gauge. It's comparable with a 3/8 inch spacing from center to center of the pegs. And I'm also using a worsted weight yarn. It's Soft Twist by Barocco and in a rich teal color. Now let's get started. Alright, the way we are going to begin the lacy chain stitch is to start right here at peg 1, and I'm going to just take my working yarn, wrap around peg 1 once, and knit off. Twice, and knit off. 3 times, 4 times, 5, and 6. There we go. Now we've just created a chain of 6, and now our working yarn is coming from the top. Now when we go to peg to create the next chain, so that our working yarn isn't stretching from the top of the chain to the base of the next chain, we have to build in extra yarn so that we can use to create that next chain. So what we're going to do is first do a yarn over. Just going to move those 2 loops together as one, and then we're going to build in the extra yarn length that we need here on this empty peg. So we're going to go 1, we're just going to E-wrap it, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll go ahead and put the 6th one on the peg we're going to be working the chain on. And we will lift over 2 loops over 1, and then this is where the trick comes in. You're going to take that first loop from the extra yarn we gave the chain, and we gave the peg, and we're just going to drop it over here onto the chain peg and knit off. And that was the first one where we did 2 over 1 was our first chain stitch, and then this was 2, and then we move this over. This will be 3, move this over, this will be 4, move this over, this will be 5, and move this final one over, and that will be your 6th chain. Now see, what we've done is we've created, if you can see here on this inside section, this is our base row right here. We've created a chain that comes down from the first peg, and then our connecting line is at the top here, and it goes down from the other, on our next chain peg, down to the base again, and here is our working yarn connected at the base. So because it's connected at the base, now we will work it as we did the first one. So we'll move this stitch over, and then we'll go ahead and just leave this one empty and work it as we did the first. So wrap it around once and knit over 2 over 1. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now because we just did it that way, the connecting line is running not from the top of the chains like on here, but it's running from the bottom. So really we're doing a zigzag like this. So it'll be very cool across, and we will not let our working yarn hang from one corner of the chain down to the bottom. So that's how we get that empty hole in there. So again, let's do the one where we're going to connect it at the top now. So we'll move the loop over and use this empty one as our yarn holding peg. So we wrap once, twice. So we did that once, and here is twice, 3 times. Now let me show you something while we're doing this one. If by chance these holding loops that you have on your holding peg, if they come loose as you're wrapping these, don't worry about it. You can still work with that, okay? So if that happens, without pulling out the tension on your working yarn, you can wrap using this extra yarn you've built in. So we did 2 actually knitted over loops. So here is the 3rd wrap that came loose, and I just wrapped it just like it was an E-wrap. So there's the 3rd one. Here's 4, 5, and then the 6th one will just get put right over there and then knit off, and that makes 6. It does exactly the same thing, so don't worry if your extra yarn gets slipped off. You can easily work it. So now our connecting line is coming from the top again, and our working yarn is down at the base. So then we can just continue doing exactly that all the way across the loom. Oops. Knitting, first moving your loops over, and then first just knitting off as you normally would for this peg, and then once you get to where your working yarn is coming from the top, that's where you use your holding peg. So go ahead and do that all the way around the loom, and we're doing this in the round to make a cowl for this particular item that I have on the loom now. I'm going to go ahead and take it around, and then when I get to this last peg here, I'm going to show you what we do for this chain section, and then we'll move on to the next portion, which is your foundation, building another foundation row before you add on your next lacy chain stitch. Alright, I've worked my way around the loom, and I am going to move this stitch to here, and this is because it's coming from the top. We're going to use this as a holding peg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th one over here. Get off. Move this one over. This one. This will make like this. Like that. Okay, and now we're at the bottom again. Now, for these last 3 pegs, because we don't want to have one left over that's not worked, so we're going to move this one over, just like normal, and then we're also going to move the last peg stitch over as well. And we're going to do our wrap, because coming from the bottom, so we can wrap it and knit it off as usual, but this time we're going to knit off all those 3 loops over the one wrap, and that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. And now we've finished the entire row of our chain lace stitch. That looks really pretty. Now we need to do a foundation row to get ready to do the next row of chain lace stitch, which will actually be alternated and start on an opposite, start on the peg number 2 instead of the first peg like we did last time, so that our chains are alternating where they're coming down, kind of like bricks. You see how it's offset from one another, and that's our aim. So we're going to do our foundation row, and then we will start the next row of chain lace stitch on the second peg rather than the first. Alright, our first row of the foundation row is going to be a purl row. So we're going to go behind that peg that we skipped last time, and we're going to purl the first peg in line. Now, if you can see all the ladder lines that are, I'm going to run this along here so you can see the back side, it's easier that way. See these ladder lines? There's one here, but it skips a peg where it goes down here. Then there's a ladder line here, then it skips a peg, and there's a ladder line here. What we're going to do on this foundation row is each of the ladder lines, these will be brought to the forward of the peg, and then the empty pegs we're going to cast on with a half hitch, so that we will end up with a solid row of loops to be worked in the next row. So on this one we have a connecting line, so that gets brought to the forward and then it gets purled. Purl this one. Now here is one of our empty pegs that has no connecting line behind it, so we're going to half hitch cast onto that one loop or one peg. So to do that, you grab your working yarn and twist it in the opposite way that you would an E-wrap, and then you place that on the peg and cinch it tight, and that's how that works. And that is so that you twist it opposite from an E-wrap so that your working yarn is coming from underneath the wrapped loop. See, that's a little difficult with this yarn, but you just do it opposite as an E-wrap and you'll be fine. Then we start over again with purl, bring that connecting line forward and purl it, and then purl the next one in line. And here's an empty one, so we do another half hitch, and then purl. Bring this forward, purl it, purl, and another half hitch. And you're going to continue this all the way across the loom until you get back to the beginning peg again. And then to complete your foundation rows before the next chain row, you will do an entire E-wrap row and an entire purl row, so that you have one full row of garter stitch in between each of the chain lace stitch rows. Alright, I've just completed the purl row of base foundation I just showed you how to do, and then I've also gone around the entire loom and have E-wrapped and then done another row of purl. And you can see this nice foundation of knitting that we've done that will give our chain lace a place to anchor to, and that's the point of those last few rows. And now it's time to do our next row of chain lace stitch, but instead of doing it on the first peg like we did the last one, we're going to start on the second peg so that our chains will be alternating. So in order to do that, it's super simple. You just take the first loop and move it to the second peg, and now this is where you will be working your chain lace from this point on, and you're all set up to do that. 3 and 6, and because it's coming from the top, we're going to do our holding peg here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 goes here, and knit off and move all these loops over just as we did earlier. And now, and when you go around doing it starting from the second peg, you will have no issues on this last peg. You can just do it as normal without knitting the 3 together. Alright, that's how you work the chain lace stitch.